Welcome to Between the Covers Summer Series, where the spotlight is on South Florida authors. I'm Ann Bocock, and joining me is Patricia Bonis, author of the new book, Jeda Bride. It's a memoir that takes us inside of Saudi Arabia's wealthiest families and asks these questions: would you sacrifice everything for your children? And how far would you go for love? Patricia, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Ann. I'm delighted to be here on your show.
We have to start at the very beginning,
Okay.
so we get a bird's eye view here. You're a co-ed at Wellesley College. You meet this man. You are absolutely smitten. But this is the glittering world. This is the richest of the rich. Who was he? And you married him?
Yes, I did. Well, I met him, and we were both actually smitten by each other, and it was a whirlwind romance. And I was looking for adventure. I really was, I have to admit. And this was perfect for me at that time. And we dated, and we just were more and more in love. And then eventually we did get married, and he took me back to his country.
His country is Saudi Arabia. And when it comes to women, this is one of the most repressive of societies. So at what point, you are how old now?
I married him at 22. I met him at 18.
When did you first realize that you could be in over your head?
Well, I think when I stepped off the plane, in Jeddah, and I saw that it was like a biblical town. I felt like I'd gone back 2,000 years. There was dirt everywhere, people laying on the floor. It looked like Ben-Hur, like the movie Ben-Hur, goats running around and no telephones. Most people didn't. That's when I realized that this was not only conservative with the religion and the laws, but it was very primitive. It was very primitive.
And you lose personal freedoms because you are a woman.
I know.
And now married to a very wealthy Saudi.
I know. And I learned very quickly also, because I was rebellious. I had a strict family, but that was nothing compared to the strictness of Saudi Arabia. And what I realized quickly was that if you break the laws, you'll end up in jail and you might end up dead. And nobody can help you. So I saw that happening to many people, and I realized I can't play around with this. I can't be rebellious. There's no good to that.
That is not an overstatement, because there is a scene in the book where you are out on a shopping spree, a shopping trip. You see a woman in the public square being stoned to death.
I know. I heard the noise. I heard screaming. I look back and I see this lady, and I couldn't see her face because she was all covered in black. And I watched as she was stoned to death. It took about 5 minutes, and then she was dead. And I said, what did she do? Oh, she committed adultery. And all you need is 3 witnesses. They could be relatives or friends of the husband, and that's it. She gets stoned to death.
I can't even imagine what that does to a young woman such as you from America watching this. But the worst part of this entire story is that your children were taken away from you. Your children were kidnapped.
That's right. That's right. And they weren't kidnapped from Saudi Arabia. They were kidnapped from Florida. I was living in Wellington, Florida at the time with him because he played polo, and that was a big popular venue for polo. And I decided to get divorced. He was not a faithful husband, and I just had enough of it. I couldn't take it anymore. And he said to me, well, you know, I can have 4 wives, which I can't even imagine a normal man of my generation saying that to a woman like me, but he did. So I had to get a divorce, and I filed for divorce, and then he took the children, threw them on a plane. They were ages 2 and 4, my son Kareem and my daughter Sultana, and they were taken to Palm Beach Airport, and I didn't see them for 14 years. They were whisked away to Saudi Arabia and held there.
And it wasn't because you didn't try to get them back.
Oh,
you couldn't get them back.
I couldn't. There was no way, and there still is. There really is no way to get children out of a country like that. They don't sign any treaties. They don't respect any of our laws, and that's fine. They have their own laws. But if I had known that, I thought I'd be safe here. but apparently I wasn't even safe here.
There was so much of this that was heartbreaking for me to read. In effect, you lost their childhood.
I did. Yeah, when I first saw my son, which I started the book, I tried to be kind to my readers. There was a lot of sadness. So I started the book on the day that I drove up to my son's apartment building. He was a college student just starting out at Boston University, and I drove up there and I did see him. And that's the first chapter of the book, because I wanted people to know before they read the rest that there is a good, happy ending to this story. But it was shocking to me when I knocked on his door and he opened the door, and there he was, 6 feet tall. He'd been 4 years old when he left. And he looked, I wouldn't have recognized him if I'd passed him in the street. You know, he was so handsome. And he said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm your mother." He had no idea that I was coming. I didn't know anything. And he almost fainted. He stepped back, and I was so scared that he would not, like maybe he'd slam the door shut, but he didn't. I said, "Please, please let me come in and speak with you." And he opened the door and let me in. And then we started our relationship over again. But he was a grown man. I'd lost the entire childhood. And the same for my daughter, Sultana.
The book ends with a scene that is a family gathering, and it's very positive, very welcoming. And after I'd read this book, I thought, okay, now I can breathe a little bit. Is this you at your core, this hopefulness? Is that what got you through these 14 difficult years?
Yes, it is. It is. I'm a very optimistic person, and I don't know. I always felt that it was my fault that this happened because I made these decisions for myself. I was very reckless, and so I took a lot of the blame on myself. And I felt that my children got the bad end of this. You know, they were stolen from their mother. They were raised without a mother. They never were told what happened or why this happened, so I can only imagine what their thoughts were growing up. And so when I got this opportunity to have dinner with the family and to be polite and nice and almost meek and humble and accepting, I did it because I wanted my children, I didn't want them to be torn apart. I didn't want them to feel that my mother hates my grandfather and my grandfather hates my mother, and who do I love and how do I love both? And I just want to bury the hatchet and go forward. And we have a happy life.
That's a true mother's love.
Yes, it is. It is, and I don't know where I just came. It was me. That's what happens. You don't tear your children apart.
You are both, in addition to being an author, now you're both a successful designer and an accomplished competitive equestrian. So how did having those passions support you emotionally through everything else?
It really did support me emotionally. It did. Working, I plunged myself into work. It was almost like when the children were kidnapped, I took a look at my life and I said, whoa, I've really gone way off the deep end. Look what I did to myself. Look what I did to them. I've got to buckle down, and I better work, and I better, and I worked very, very, very hard on my career. And I was actually the opposite of what I was when, I was like living the high life and flitting and fluttering from one country to another. And I just buckled down and I worked very hard, and I created a very successful business for myself. And I kept thinking, when my children, I believed I would see them again. I wasn't sure when. It took 14 years, but I was hoping it would be a year or 2 or 3, but it wasn't. But I always thought when they see me for the first time, I want to show them something they'll be proud of and that they'll be comfortable with. And I felt that because they were riders, they'd see me riding, they'd understand there's bonds that we have that maybe they didn't feel yet, weren't taught them. So I felt that all those things that I did over the 14 years were going to contribute to myself being acceptable and have a successful relationship with them.
Patricia, looking back, what would you tell your younger self?
Oh my gosh, I wish I had the chance to do that. But you don't get second chances in life, do you? I would have told myself, you got to snap out of this. This is too crazy. This is really insane. You better not. If you have to be with this guy, if you have to marry him, don't have children. And then you think, well, my two beautiful children wouldn't have been born. So I don't know. I think maybe it was meant to be. Maybe I had to do it. I don't know.
The book is Jeda Bride. Patricia Bonis, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you, Anne. I'm so delighted, and thank you for showing interest in my book. I believe it's a story that people should hear. I think it's an important story, and thank you for bringing it to your show.
I'm Ann Bocock. Please join me on the next Between the Covers.